Hi everyone, this is Ted Bauman of Banyan Hill Publishing. It's a new year and I want to try something new with my YouTube videos. Every once in a while I want to review a topic which I find particularly interesting, one that illuminates how our economy is changing and potentially gives you insights into how certain sectors of the economy are developing, which may allow you to take advantage of them or to avoid problems. And what I want to start with this year is Amazon.com. I do a lot of shopping on Amazon. I think probably most Americans do. But one of the things that I didn't know about Amazon is just how important its so-called seller marketplace is, the Amazon marketplace. Now let's start with a story. The story is of a guy named Zach Plansky. Zach lives in California, and he has a company that manufactures and sells rifle scopes for high-performance shooting. Now, Zach has been selling his products on Amazon for some time, and a while back he noticed that somebody had suddenly overnight posted a bunch of 5-star reviews of his scopes. Now, normally he will get a review maybe once every 2 weeks or so, so this made him suspicious, especially because the reviews seemed to be written in very poor English. So he submitted them to Amazon and said, I think there might be some fraud going on here. Amazon never replied. Instead, they sent him a note 2 weeks later saying, as I quote, "You have manipulated product reviews on our site. This is against our policies. As a result, you may no longer sell on Amazon.com and your listings have been removed from our site." So for the good deed of having reported these fraudulent reviews on his site, Amazon kicked him off. Now, it nearly destroyed his business. It nearly destroyed the livelihoods of his 16 employees, and it cost him about $150,000 in revenue. And the only solution he actually ever managed to get after months and months of trying to solve this problem was to write directly to Jeff Bezos begging for help. Now, let's consider the fact that Amazon controls about half of the online retail market. Now, you may think that that means that Amazon is selling half of the goods sold online. Well, that's not true at all. That's because 2/3 of all the goods that are sold on Amazon.com are actually sold on behalf of third-party sellers. It's $175 billion worth of sales every year. And revenues from the fees and commissions that come from these sellers on Amazon.com are growing far faster than Amazon's own sales. In fact, the company earned about $20 billion in the first half of 2017 from sales from third-party vendors, which was a 41% increase over the year before. It was about 18% of the company's total revenue. Now, here's the problem. Having taken over this enormous chunk of human activity, basically this enormous chunk of small retailers who are selling on Amazon's site, Amazon now has to govern all of this. It basically has to create rules. Now, what it's had to do is to create its own legal system. And that legal system, it turns out, is an absolute disaster. For sellers, Amazon is basically like living under a government. You rely on its infrastructure, you rely on its warehouses, shipping networks, its advertising, its website, etc., and you pay taxes in the form of fees. And one of the things that Amazon has to do in order to make this system work is to have a system of rules. And it turns out that these rules are unpredictable, they're arbitrary, and they're extremely harsh. It doesn't take much to get kicked off the site completely if you're a seller, which completely ruins your business. The problem is that Amazon's internal system is not subject to any other kind of law. When you sign a contract to work with Amazon, you're basically agreeing that you are going to abide by its rules, including its own methods of resolving problems. Now, let's look at a couple of examples of what can happen under this system, because I found this absolutely fascinating. One example was a listing for a rustic barnwood picture frame, which resulted in the seller being kicked off Amazon because they decided that the product was potentially dangerous. What had happened is that somebody got a splinter hanging a picture with this picture frame, reported it on a review, which actually happened to be a 5-star review. Amazon picked up that review and decided that the seller had to be kicked off their website completely because they were selling dangerous products. The solution? The seller had to put in the product description that you should wear gloves when you install the product. At that point, they were allowed back on. A second seller was basically suspended from all Amazon access for selling Nike training shoes that were quote unquote not as described. What he found out after he filed an appeal was that a number of people had claimed that the shoes were too small. So the solution was to put in the description for the product, wear thin socks when you wear these shoes. And at that point, Amazon allowed this person back on the site. The problem is that those are kind of legitimate mistakes which can be resolved through reason. But what about what happens when somebody else tries to basically undermine a competing seller by using this system against another seller? For example, people will put up fake reviews of products. You can basically buy fake reviews of competitors' Amazon products for about $5 on the website. You could do things like take a competitor's product, make a video of it exploding or burning and claim it's dangerous, and then post that review, resulting in instant Amazon shutdown for the legitimate seller. Some people have even been known to hijack another seller's Amazon site and change the description of an innocent product, like a child's toy, to make it appear as though it's a sex toy, which immediately gets the entire seller banned. You have people who have hijacked the trade names and usernames of Amazon sellers and use those to disrupt their sales and takes over their entire business. Even bribes to Amazon employees. So the bottom line is that what we're seeing in today's online marketplace, something that is really hidden from the rest of us, is this massive, massive change in the way that commerce is being regulated. Not by the laws that our representatives make, not by laws that we ourselves have influence over, but by the internal workings of Amazon. And how does this work? Well, it turns out that the only recourse sellers on Amazon have if something like this goes wrong is to send an appeal on which is a little button that you click at the bottom of the email saying that you've been suspended, and you send in this note. There's no telephone number you can call, and you can never speak to a real person. Instead, the seller has to send in an appeal. Now, about 3/4 of the time, the response to the appeal is a request for more information. And it turns out that the reason for this is because the people in the performance department who respond to these things are based in places like India, Costa Rica, the Philippines, etc. They're call center workers. They're given about 4 minutes per case to decide what to do about a case, and they're only allowed to sell pre-packaged, pre-written responses. Even if they see what the actual problem is, even if they understand what it is, even if they know there's a simple solution, they're not allowed to tell that to the seller. They're only allowed to send the pre-packaged responses. And one of the most common ones is send me more information, because if you can't figure it out in 4 minutes and you're an employee of one of these performance centers at Amazon, you get penalized. So the message here, folks, I think, is that what we're looking at is Amazon as an example of a growing phenomenon in the modern American economy, which is of companies that have taken over a huge chunk of our normal life, our commercial life, and are basically operating on the basis of their own internal rules. And as those companies grow, as they become more effective or rather more dominant in their markets, we're going to find that more and more of what we do, both as consumers and producers, as people who sell, are going to be governed by rules over which we have no influence whatsoever. The question is that going to be good for the American economy in the long run, or is it going to hold it back? Well, I think time will tell, but my suspicion is that it's not going to be good, because simply it's going to encourage people to continue to manipulate these systems, and there's no recourse, because not everybody can send an email to Jeff Bezos and have him answer in a favorable way. This is Ted Bauman pointing out one of the oddities of the modern American economy. Take care.